something about the preamble of the Indian Constitution. The preamble is the introduction or the short summary of the Constitution. The Constitution is the grand norm of the nation. Grand norm means it's the central law or central. It's like building a house upon a particular what we can say. It is what helps us to build a nation more. So it's foundation of the nation. So what is the foundation of India is mentioned clearly in the Constitution of India. So upon the Constitution only all other legislations, the rules, bylaws, orders, everything stands on the Constitution, on the battlefield, on the leveled field of the Constitution. Okay. So everything will be in consonance with this Constitution. So the introduction to the Constitution is known as preamble. So the preamble has clearly emphasized what all ideals are behind the Indian nation, what all principles that we follow, and who gave the Constitution into existence, who for whom the Constitution is for. Everything is clearly described in the preamble. So let's look at what this particular passage says. The preamble serves as an introductory statement to the Constitution of India, articulating the core philosophy and foundational principles of the nation. Again, it was formally adopted on November 26, 1949, which should be memorized by you clearly. And we'll move on to the passage, continue with the passage, and declares India to be a sovereign, socialist, secular, democratic republic. The words socialist, secular, and integrity were notably incorporated in the preamble by the 42nd Amendment Act of 1976. The preamble holds immense legal and philosophical significance. Its legal status, however, has been subject of a pivotal judicial debate. Now we move on to the judicial case laws which discussed about the preamble. In the Berry Union case of 1960, the Supreme Court's initial stance was that preamble was not an integral part of the Constitution, this implying it could not be used to interpret its provisions. This position was fundamentally overturned in the landmark Keshavananda Bharati versus State of Kerala 1973 case. In this historic judgment, a 13-judge bench established that the preamble is indeed a part of the Constitution, and while it can be amended, its basic structure remains unalterable. The preamble acts as a guiding principle for the judiciary and serves as a vital tool for understanding the intent of the Constitution's frameworks. It outlines the Constitution's key objectives that are securing justice, liberty, equality, and fraternity for all citizens. So while purely reading this paragraph itself, there are a lot of information that we should know beforehand, even before looking into this passage and answering. We should know certain things as a basic knowledge of the Constitution. Okay. So the thing is that the first information we get from this paragraph is that it serves as an introductory statement to the Constitution of India. That is fine, which articulates the core philosophy and foundational principles of the nation. It's like asking someone, what are your principles? What is your political ideology? What are your basic philosophies? So that answer would be given if we ask India, what is your basic foundation? In what philosophy do you believe? What are your ideals? It will be answered by looking at the preamble of the Indian Constitution. It was formally adopted on November 26, 1949, which will be celebrated as the Constitution Day. Okay, and declares India to be a sovereign, socialist, secular, democratic republic. So what is India is defined in these 5 concepts. India is a sovereign country, it is a socialist country, secular, democratic, and republic country. So what do these terms mean? Okay, first we can look into that. Sovereign means it does not concede its power to a foreign authority. It is having a separate legal identity. It is subservient to no particular nation. It is having an individual identity itself. So India is no longer under any forces. India is the supreme authority for India itself. So India is a sovereign. That is the concept, or that is the meaning behind the term sovereign. Then we have the concept of socialism. Socialism would be to have to give. The nation is intended to give to its citizens equal social and political, cultural rights. So every citizens will be treated equally. That is the concept of socialism. Then we have the term secular. India is a secular country. Why? India is having no particular religion as its national religion. while many other countries in the world are practicing that they have a national religion. But India does not follow that particular policy. India is a secular country, but does that mean that there is no existence of religion in this country? No. India respects every religion equally, but we are not having a particular religion as our national religion. Okay, so there is an article in the constitution which says particularly for which is dedicated especially for religions, but we are having a secular existence as the concept of our nation. And democratic, the people elects representatives for themselves by themselves. Okay, and the concept of republic, we are not having a head as a monarch, but we are having an elected representative as a we have the president as the head of our nation. So these are the meanings behind the concepts of sovereign, socialist, secular, democratic, and republic. And the next information the passage imparts is that the words socialist, secular, and integrity in the constitution, in the preamble, these terms were notably incorporated by the 42nd Amendment Act of 1976. When you get into studying law, especially the constitutional law, the 47th Amendment Act is the most important amendment act that has ever been happened. So many things happened in the 42nd Constitution Amendment Act. So the things, the words socialist, secular, and integrity, these concepts were introduced into the constitution only during 1976 in the 42nd Amendment Act. The preamble holds immense legal and philosophical significance. Its legal status, however, has been a subject of pivotal judicial debate. That is, whether this preamble is part of the constitution. The constitution can be amended, right? The constitution's provisions can be changed. But the thing is that there happened so many debates as to whether this preamble is an integral part of the constitution, whether it can be changed. If it can be changed, how far we can change the structure of the preamble, etc. were discussed in various judicial cases. The first one is the Rubari Union case in 1960. The Supreme Court's initial stance was that the preamble was not an integral part of the constitution, but it was later overruled, and in Keshavananda Bharati, which is a landmark case, Keshavananda Bharati was a state of Kerala. It is actually a case which came after the land ceiling limit, which was introduced by the Kerala government. The Kerala government said that only this much piece of land a man can hold. The government put a threshold value or a ceiling limit of land which a person can hold. So this Keshavananda Bharati, they approached the court saying that it cannot be legislated in such a manner, and the concept we are studying right now is related to the preamble of the constitution, whether preamble is part of the constitution and whether it can be amended. So that particular question was asked in this particular case, and it said that preamble is part of the constitution and it can be amended, it can be altered or changed, but the thing is that the basic structure should remain unalterable. The basic structure, which would mean that India is a sovereign, socialist, secular, democratic republic. So these ideologies or these philosophies, they cannot be altered. That is the basic structure of the Indian constitution. Other than that, you can change anything, but you should not put a hand into, or you should not alter this basic structure of the constitution. So the preamble is part of the constitution and it can be amended, but the basic structure. So the Keshavananda Bharati was a state of Kerala. In that particular case, the judiciary evolved a principle called basic structure doctrine, which was evolved by the Indian judiciary themselves. So the basic structure remains unalterable. It is what it's put forward by the Keshavananda Bharati case. And the preamble, it acts as a guiding principle for the judiciary and serves as a vital tool for understanding the intent of the constitution framers. So this passage is saying that why do we have to look into the preamble? While deciding cases, the passage says that judges can look into the preamble to understand the concept or the ideology behind a particular legislation or a particular constitutional provision, for example. So while the court is deciding a dispute, which is in respect to a constitutional provision, the preamble is the guiding force or guiding beacon for this judiciary, so that the judiciary can understand the intent of the constitution framers. What are the ideologies? So if we know that there is a socialist perspective for the constitution framers while the court decide a case based on the equality, right to equality article 14. So if there is a particular dispute with related to the article 14 concept, the judiciary can look into this basic structure of the constitution, and we can identify that there is this concept of socialism which is mentioned in the preamble. So it is easy for the judges to realize what are principles they should follow, and what should be the output that they should give to the dispute. It outlines the constitution key objectives: securing justice, liberty, equality, and fraternity for all citizens. This passage says in brief that preamble is there. Preamble is an introductory statement for the constitution, and there are certain ideologies or philosophies that are mentioned in the preamble, and through a lot of judicial disputes and judicial overrulings and cases, the court decided that preamble is part of the constitution and it can be amended. Amended means it can be changed, but the thing is that this basic structure of the constitution should be made intact. It should be unalterable. No one can change the basic structure of the constitution. And what are the components of the basic structure of the constitution? The ideologies such as the sovereign, socialist, secular, democratic, republic. These nature of the Indian constitution or the Indian government cannot be changed through any amendment. Okay, and why we are talking about the preamble? Why is there a need to talk about the preamble? Because the preamble acts as a guiding light for the judiciary, so that if at all a dispute comes up before the court can look into the preamble as what are ideologies the court should follow, what all ideologies does the constitution put forward, so that disputes can be resolved in that way by keeping in mind the basic structure of the constitution. What all principles should the judiciary adhere to? Okay. So when we look to the first question, the phrase sovereign in the preamble most accurately implies that India is what? So we should know basically the literal meaning of the word sovereign. Option A dominion of the British Crown. B, a state is headed by the president. C, an independent state free to conduct its own affairs. D, a state that must follow the laws of other nations. So I had already discussed the meanings of each of those concepts. Sovereign, it is not subservient to any other foreign nation. It is having supremacy in its own authority. So it is option A is not correct. A dominion of the British Crown. No, it is not pledging its allegiance to any other foreign authority. Option A is wrong. A state is headed by the president. That is correct when looking into the Indian perspective, but that is not the meaning of the concept sovereign. A state is headed by the president. When we look into the nation, our nation is headed by the president, but that term is coined as a republic. That is not the correct meaning for the term sovereign. And we have option C, an independent state free to conduct its own affairs. That is a clear meaning of the word sovereign. A state is independent and it is free to conduct its own affairs. While looking into these concepts, you should not be confused with the term state and nation. Okay. While we say that in this general sense, when we use the term state, it is not states like Kerala, Tamil Nadu, Jammu and Kashmir, Delhi, etc. It is not mentioned in that particular sense. When we say state in the general sense, we intend that it is the nation itself. Okay. So option C would be correct. And option D, we can look into that also. A state that must follow the laws of other nations. No, we are a separate free entity. We are an independent state and we are free to conduct our own affairs. So option C would be the right answer. Describe the concept sovereign. Option C, an independent state free to conduct its own affairs. It is not subservient to any foreign authority. It should not pledge its allegiance to any other nations. It should not follow the laws of other nations. It can incorporate certain ideas into its constitution or its governance, but it should not follow the laws of other nations. And there is no system of British Crown dominance anymore. And we can move on to the next question.